Hey guys, Huge Pipe Man here. You can see I'm not in an excavator today. We're down in my basement. So I've had problems with spalling walls the last 3-4 years. That's when I bought the place. It's been an ongoing thing even before that. They used to have a wall framed in this corner in particular, and that really, I think, made the moisture stick in there and then the concrete deteriorate. But I've been looking at some videos on how to do this. I'm pretty confident we can do it. And the price I got from a actual basement company to do this was astronomical in my opinion. It was $16,000 just to resurface the walls in a 23 by 23 basement, which, I mean, if you make a lot of money, it's probably easier for somebody to do it, but I'm just an operator, does sewer and water. I could think of a lot of better things to spend my $16,000 on, so I'm going to try to do it myself here. You can see on our back wall here, I already have a start. I ended up doing that the hard way. I used just this mortar mix I have, and I was just balling it up, putting the bond around, wetting the walls, and then throwing it at the wall, and it would stick. And then I just use a mag, and it wouldn't stick as much as I wanted it to work it easily. You kind of had to stick it, mag it, and then let it sit, and then you just refinish the top. I use a sponge. So you can see it's not perfect, but like I said, I'm going to put some studs outside here and then spray foam it, so it's going to be out of sight, out of mind. But like I said, I want to try to help you guys out, save you some money, but I'm just going to show you some essential tools I think we're going to need. So far we got our PPE, got some safety glasses, a respirator. You don't necessarily need a hat, but I feel it helps with keeping stuff out of your face, and I'm a hat guy, so I got my old RDO hat, already sweat stained up. It's kind of my home improvement hat. And then over here, I got some poly. We're going to be hanging some poly up so I don't dust out the whole basement. A wire brush, a couple crowbars, a regular brush, a leaf blower. That's kind of all for just flaking the stuff off. And then some buckets. I don't have a dumpster, so I'm just loading up buckets, getting rid of some in the weekly trash every week, kind of doing this budget. Broom, shovel, scraper. And then as far as the concrete stuff's going to go, I got this fancy contraption that is supposed to be able to put this stuff on a lot easier, so hopefully I'll be able to show you that later on. And then we got our mixing drill, air compressor, some bonder, a weed sprayer for the bonder, garden hose, big tub for the concrete, and then our concrete finishing tool, sponge of that. So I hope to help you out and see if we can figure this out together. I got a lot of work ahead of me. For now, I'm going to start hanging up the poly, and we'll pick you up after that. Okay, so we're going to start hanging the poly. So what you're going to need for sure is the poly, and optional depending on how you want to hang it. I'm using a stapler and just stapling it to the joist. I'm using just duct tape on the floor. I don't really care about the floor. It's going to get ripped out someday. But if you're using it on a good floor, you definitely don't use duct tape. And then also a broom for cleaning up the floor, otherwise it's not going to stick on the loose stuff. And then also a utility knife. So here we go. Well, there we are. I'm not a poly hanging pro by any means, but it'll work for what I got. I'm just gonna leave that end kind of undone. It does not like sticking to the floor where I had the old concrete, but I'm also gonna want to get back in there with the air compressor and stuff. So yeah, it's gonna be it for today, but I'll be back tomorrow. We'll start on the removal. Alright guys, day 2. We're gonna start flaking some of this concrete off. You gotta get all the loose stuff off before you can start applying the new concrete. So that's what we're gonna do. Get rid of the loose stuff, including the wood. You don't want that on there. Any nails we see we want to get rid of. They can rust out over time with the moisture, and it'll just lead to more expansion. So got a respirator, got my safety glasses. It's gonna get dusty. Hopefully I don't kill my GoPro, but here we go. So you can see just how dusty that is. I'm going to take my camera out of here for now. Finish up. I don't want to try to kill my GoPro on the second day. But I'll get back to you once we get it all cleaned up. And we'll take a look. Alright, so I got the stuff cleaned off the wall. Use the wire brush, that crowbar you saw me use. If you're concerned about missing spots, you can just kind of density check it like you would for studs. You can definitely hear this is hard, but you can see obviously when they poured it in 1915 they did it in chunks because we got cold joints where there's some big cracks. To start, you want to wet it down. I already did a little bit. Well, moisture doesn't hurt for the bonding. And we're going to get some concrete mixed up and wet it down again, bond it, and we'll show you how to do that. So I'm going to wet it down again. I want to get it pretty good and wet.
Get up there because you're going to spray that no matter what anyway. So even if it's thinner.
And we take our sprayer, dunk that in water to start, get it all clean. This is all trials, first time we use this thing, but this is how I was doing before, spraying the bond around good. Like my hand's a little clogged here. Make it work. I like to do just sections so it doesn't dry out too much. So you want it to stay wet. So here's the
Go up here before you spray that fire.
I'll get that later. I just want to get chunks off. Moment of truth, we got the mud mixed pretty wet. There wasn't an exact mixing ratio on how the other guys did it, but you just scoop it, put it in this thing, and here we go. All right, so here we are. We got the first coat on. We decided to go with we're going to do 2 coats, so we did a scratch coat. Typically they do this as stucco. So you do that scratch coat, so then your finish coat will stick onto that scratching better. But you can see here, down where we had the cold joints, I'm going to have to probably do 3 coats on those, just because of how deep those were. Because if you put too much, it's just going to keep falling down. But yeah, that's the wall so far. Probably let this sit a couple days. I'll probably come back tomorrow. Like I said, I'll do that crack down there, that big cold joint. And then the one up here on the other floor, I think it'll be fine to do 1 finish coat on. But so far we're making progress. I'll try to make a better video on this Vever concrete sprayer thing. The thing worked pretty slick. We did find you want to mix your mud pretty wet. It'll shoot out better, and then if you don't want to finish it right away, kind of just let it sit. And it was actually pretty easy to finish compared to the method I did on that wall with trying to throw the mud at the wall. That didn't work too good. So if you get that sprayer, mix your mud wet, you just spray it up and down, and then you just come with your trowel. Seemed to work good. Sorry I couldn't get it on video. GoPro just was getting in the way. I don't have much space here, but yeah, I'll come back to you when we do the finish coat. I got some more work to do over here where this orange is. I want to grind off all the paint so it'll stick good. Yeah, I'll come back to you once we're on the finish coat, and hopefully we can do that in 1 more coat and it'll look pretty dang good. Today we're going to be putting a finish coat on, so I'm going to give you a little demo. This thing costs a whopping $40. I got this one from Home Depot, but there's other variants like it on Amazon. This one is a Vever, but I've seen there's probably about 10-15 different makes and models, but the basic design's pretty simple. You got the hopper. It has 4 little holes, and then in the inside there's pneumatic jets that go in there, and then it just feeds off this rod. You got a basic valve that you can squeeze. And then the only bad thing is it only came with this coupling. There was no air chuck coupling, so I ended up just stealing this little chunk off an old air hose I had. Already had the fittings on, and just took a hose clamp, clamped it on. And so far no leaks, so it's working pretty good. But I just have to get the wall prepped here, and then we'll show you how it works. So to prep the wall, like using a mist, you want to get your wall good and wet. I'm going to do about a 1/2 inch coat on everything. And I like to chunk it out. I'm using 80-pound bags of concrete, mixing it by hand. So I don't want to do too much at a time and have my concrete go bad. I'm also going to do a little bit on this other wall. I did this a different method before I got this thing, but I want to do another little coat on it. But don't be afraid of moisture. The moisture helps the bonding. We got that all nice and moist. I'm also using a concrete bonding agent. So I've been using a weed sprayer, spraying that on. Make sure you hit it good. You want to try to apply this while your concrete is still moist from that mist. And then we're going to be using a mortar mix. I've been using Type S from Menard. Seems to be working pretty good for me. Just make sure you mix pretty wet. I've just been using a hand drill like so in a big tub. Obviously, the wetter it is, the easier it's going to come out, but you still don't want it too wet where it's just going to be liquid spraying on. So what you're going to do, you have to have an air compressor obviously hooked up to this. But all you're going to do, scoop it up, get it nice inside there. And you want to be about, the package said 5 to 10 centimeters, but about 6 inches away from the wall. And then you're just going to do kind of an up and down motion. And you're just going to continue that motion all the way up and down the wall, applying it as liberally as you need to. So you can see, I don't know, it might be hard to tell, but I have a little hump here and a little hole there, so you just have to fill it in as you need. And then I'm going to be using this 2x4 kind of as a screed to screed it out. But I'm going to speed this up a little bit so you can see how it goes. The air compressor is going to be really loud, so you won't be able to hear me. But once I start to finish, I'll kind of pause and show you how we're going to be finishing it. Also, the PSI, it said about 4 to 8 bar, which I'm in America, so we use PSI. That translated about 56 PSI to almost 100, so you can kind of play it by ear. Right now I have the air compressor set at about 65, and it seems to be working pretty good. You can see if it starts to not spray that good, either you might want to add some moisture to your mud, or if your jets get jammed in here, you can dump this out, whatever you have in there. You just take this in a bucket of water, and you just squeeze the trigger, and the jets will help clean up the hopper. I'm going to add a little bit more water to my mud at the bottom to get a little too set up for my liking. I forgot to put on my mud gloves before, but concrete isn't too great for your bare skin. It can lead to concrete burns and irritation, so it doesn't hurt to have some PPE. Like I said, we're going to be using this 2x4 for our screed. If you have a fancy screed, go ahead and use it. This thing's pretty straight. Obviously you want to make sure it's not bowed or cupped, but should work pretty good for what I'm using for. But then the concrete that's left on the ground, as long as your floor is clean, I don't see any problem with using it to help with your coat. It's all the same, otherwise you're just going to end up wasting it. But if you left the debris on the floor, that kind of stuff, you probably don't want to use it. It's going to get mixed in and deteriorate your concrete. But my position, I vacuumed everything, so we should be good to use it. What we're going to do is start at the bottom. We're just going to pull up. Kind of want to leave this angle. And you see, we're not going to get it perfect at all. We might end up just using a trowel on this, because this isn't turning out. So maybe we'll just use our trowel. We'll do the same thing, go from the bottom. We're just going to work it up. you need to fill in holes and such, just take that, whack it on. We got some holes up here. As you can see, I'm not a concrete professional, but we're making it work. I'm just kind of feathering it out. The good part, top part of my wall is pretty good. Not too worried about resurfacing that. I'm going to grab a square trowel I had just for the corner. Gotta remember where I put it. So you get the point. That's how it's going to go. Obviously, fine tune it how you want on troweling it. I got it pretty flat, could be better. I'm no concrete trowel expert, but I'm going to keep going. Probably going to let this sit for 10-20 minutes. We'll see. Don't want it to get super hard, but hard enough where if you smear it around with a sponge, it's not just going to all fall off the wall. So you want to kind of let it set up a little bit, and then we can go ahead and we'll sponge finish the outside. Kind of give you a finish like this. I'm going to try my best to make it a little bit better looking than that, but see how it goes. Alright, so you can see we got the wall all coated. You can see it's not perfect. If you look in this corner, we're going to sponge finish it. Like I said, I'm not looking for perfection by any means. We're going to be putting studs out, spray foam behind it, so if it's a little jagged, never going to notice anyway. But if you want it perfect, obviously you could spend the time, mag it out as much as you want to get it as smooth as you want, but for me this is plenty good. I'm just going to let it sit for a little bit longer. It's still a little bit soft yet before we want to finish. If you finish too early, it's just going to end up falling off the wall on you and turn into a real headache. But we'll be right back when we're ready to finish this. Alright, so here we are. It's been an exhausting afternoon, but I think we're about ready to start finishing. So all I'm doing to finish is just using a regular tile sponge. Get most of the water out of it. And I'll leave a little bit, but more or less just going in a circular motion, kind of blending all this concrete together, giving it kind of a rough finish. You can kind of get a little concrete to move this way if it's not perfect. Like I said, my wall's kind of way out of perfect. It's straight enough for what I'm looking for. Like I said, we're just doing a circular motion. Kind of see there, I don't know how good you can see it, but some places, if they're a little wet yet, you don't want to apply too much pressure. You're going to end up taking the concrete off the wall, and then you almost have to start over with the trowel. Probably could have waited a little bit longer to finish, but I have some spots of the wall that are a little drier. They're starting to harden up real fast. Some spots that are still a little soft, so we're just going to do our best here. And all I'm basically doing is just trying to get this so spray foam will stick to it. If your sponge gets all full, you can just rinse it out in your bucket, wring it out again. Just keep on going, doing some swirls. So you just don't want to apply too much. I'm barely applying any pressure. Doing it this way, you can kind of blend in any tiny little holes you got, any imperfections in the finished surface. I tried using a sponge trowel, but I can't figure out the feel on it, so I went back to using the regular tile sponge. I can kind of feel better on how much pressure I'm applying here. You can probably see, like I said, it's still wavy. I could have spent all day probably trying to trowel this stuff out to get it perfectly flat, but I'm not too concerned about getting it perfect. So you can see it's not perfect by any means, but to my standard, it's plenty good. When we go to do the wall, we're gonna put it an inch off the wall anyway, and then spray foam all this. So this should be a nice rough surface for that spray foam to stick to. I haven't decided yet if I'm gonna waterproof it or not. I know a lot of spray foam is waterproof if you apply it the right way, so I'm gonna have to see on that. Otherwise, if you'd waterproof it, obviously let it cure and you can either spray on or paint it on, but we'll come back in a couple days here, let this cure, and we'll see what the end result is, and then I'll go over some tips I think that might help you if you do this that I learned along the way. Definitely was a challenge for me. For sure, 2 people is awesome. I ended up having my buddy come and help me do the rest of this final coat. 2 people is pretty good. But yeah, otherwise we'll come back tomorrow and close it out. Alright guys, so you can see the wall is pretty much setting up here. It's curing nicely. Obviously it's not perfect. You can probably see there's a couple of ripples in it, but from what we started with, it's looking a lot better. So I'm just going to go over some things that I think maybe would help you if you want to do this yourself, as well as some cost in the end here that I calculated off the quote I got and then the price I ended up putting into this. But some tips I think for you. Definitely having a second person help you with applying the concrete. He said you don't necessarily need it for the clean off. That was pretty simple, but having 2 people for applying it was a big help. If you can find a screed, like aluminum, whatever they're made out of. I tried using a 2x4, that just didn't work out for me. It ended up sticking to the 2x4. And then also that Vever spray gun, that thing seemed to work awesome. Granted, you have to have the mud wet, so make sure you have that. But anyhow, this is how it is. I'm just going to go over some pricing. So I have a 23 by 8 wall here. My whole basement is square, so every wall is 23 feet by 8. So that comes out to about 184 square feet per wall, so 736 total. So I got quoted, it was over 16 grand, but we'll just round it off to 16 grand to, do the whole thing. So that's all 4 walls. So this is 1 wall, so we divide that by 4, so 4,000 a wall is roughly what they wanted. So I use about 15 bags of Type S mortar mix on this. You can use whatever you want to use. That's just what I used. It seemed to work pretty good. Seems to be pretty strong. So those were about $8.20 a bag. That Vever spray gun, I got that off Home Depot for $40. They make them on Amazon all over the place. You can get more expensive ones. I found one of the cheaper ones and it seemed to work pretty good. Poly, obviously I'd hang that. And then that big tub. Granted, so in this, my parts and material costs, granted I had an air compressor, I have a mixing drill, I have all the tools I needed. So if you didn't have that, that'd be extra on top of this. So for my parts, I had about $196. And then labor, I figured I had about an hour to hang in the poly, 2 hours into clean off, about 6 hours for each coat, so 12 hours for both coats. That's with that second person, so it was about 2 guys for 3 hours for them coats. So in total I have about 15 hours. So if I would do this for somebody, on the side, I'd probably charge them about $50 an hour, unless they're a friend obviously, but I just rounded that out to a $50 an hour labor cost. So 15 hours times 50 is $750. So for this 1 wall in total with the parts, material, labor, I got $946 is what I think I'd have into it. So they wanted 4,000. I did it in less than 1,000. That's with labor. Obviously, I'm not going to charge myself, so I basically did this wall for $196. But like I said, if somebody's going to charge you, it's probably going to charge you from $50 to $100 in labor. But so times that by 4 for the whole project, they wanted 16,000. So instead of 15 bags, I'd multiply that times 4. I'd have 60 bags of concrete, come out to about 1.32 yards of concrete. And in total, my parts would be about $640 for the whole thing. And labor would be about $60. So just basing this 15 hours it took for this wall, times all 4, so you got 60 hours. So you have about $3,000 in labor, $640 in parts for a total of $3,600. 3640 if you want to get technical. But so they wanted 16,000. I think you could comfortably do it in 3,600 bucks. That's a savings of over $12,000. So even if you needed an air compressor, a mixing drill, this and that, I think you get all that for under $1,000. So that's still a savings of around, 11 grand easily, even 13, depending on what you get. So, I mean, I'm not trying to bash any companies at all. Everybody has to make a living. I'm just telling you what I got quoted and what I did it for. But if you feel this helped you, if you're having this kind of problem, this is how I mitigated it. I navigated my way through YouTube. I've seen there wasn't very many videos on my specific problem, so that's why I wanted to make a video trying to help you guys if you had problems like this. But if you like this, thought it was helpful, leave me a like. If you thought I'm stupid and did a bad job, if you would have done it differently, critique me in the comments. I'm always open to critiques. I use it in my personal job every day. If somebody knows how to do something better, I learn from my mistakes and take account, and I figure that in. So the next time I do something, hopefully I'll do it better. Obviously, you're not always going to fix it perfectly, but learn from your mistakes. But like I said, this is how it turned out for me. If you do this on your own, awesome. But look for me on TikTok. I have a page on there. Huge Pipe Man. I run an excavator for a living, so I like to post my POV running equipment. Think it's pretty neat. Kind of share the world of what I do. I have an old house here, so I have a lot of home improvement work to do. That's why I ended up getting this camera. I want to share with you, how I'm fixing it. Maybe it'll help everybody else in the future. But if you like this, like I said, leave a like. If you think I'm dumb, leave a comment. And otherwise, we'll look forward to seeing you in the next video.